Hello again, everyone, and welcome to The Crusher. I'm your host, Josh Brewster, and today I've got a very special guest, a guy I've wanted to have on for a long time now. This is Mr. Dave Schulz. Dave is a keyboardist extraordinaire and a great songwriter and working musician, and I know him from, I know him from L.A., but we are both Buffalonians. So, Dave, welcome to The Crusher today.
Happy to be here, man. How you been, Josh? Everything good?
Yeah, no, everything's good. It's better now that I'm talking to you. Dave, it's interesting. Let's go back in time, and then we're going to fast forward here to the present and the future.
Yeah.
I think you have an interesting story. One of the things I want to talk about a little later is the state of not only the music industry in the digital age, but what that means for a musician and songwriter in the digital age. So, but I want to back up. I know you through the Goo Goo Dolls, who you toured with on their biggest tour. And you're a Buffalonian, which there's the connection there. We all are, Rob and John and
Sure.
you and I.
Yeah.
So that's where I know you from. So take me back to that gig, and then I want to get into C.O. Jones and some other things.
Sure. So, I mean, I was kind of tooling around Buffalo as a keyboard player at that time. My first band, Marvelous Sauce, I owe a lot to them because they basically provided me with my first real tour. So, we would rehearse at the Goo Goo Dolls rehearsal space. So that's kind of how I met those guys. And Robbie was DJing at the old Pink classic dive bar in Buffalo for many years, and I met him there. I would kind of nudge him all the time and be like, hey, man, if you ever need keyboards, here I am. And years later, out of the blue, he called me, which was awesome. At the time, I was kind of, I had exhausted all of my musical, sort of goals in Buffalo at that time. It wasn't like, I just felt like I couldn't do any more with what I had. I had C.O. Jones and I had various things that I was doing, but we had peaked in popularity and I didn't really have anywhere else to go with it. So the timing that he called was actually pretty awesome. He called me right. I had just started, I'm trying to remember this correctly, the chronology, but I had just started a programming gig, like computer programming for the Rath building downtown. And the guy was training me for a month. And Robbie calls on the first day. He calls when I come home after my first day of real work with no training after a whole month. This poor guy. This guy that was training me, basically, I had to call him. Robbie calls and asks me to go out to L.A. to play with them. I basically quit the job that day. It had to be. So
yeah,
fortunately, the guy that was training me understood the imperative nature of the situation and gave me a break. So that was my only real job.
One of your first, good, I'm glad to hear it. One of your first gigs, I believe, was opening for the Stones at United Center in Chicago. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
No. The first gig I had was in the Casale, New York, where they had Woodstock. I think it was called A Day in the Garden.
Okay.
So I was hired just to play the song Iris because it had strings on it. And that's why they called me, to play the string parts. And the Stones thing was pretty life-changing. That was later in the tour. I think that was in March of '99. There's some clips online of that. But yeah, I have a Goo Goo Dolls. Sorry, what?
Did you get to interact? Did you get to interact with the Stones at all?
Not only that, I got to play pool with Ronnie Wood and Keith Richards, and I won.
That's awesome.
So they signed my leather jacket. I framed the jacket, and it's on my wall now. I never wore it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
There you have it.
So let's talk for a minute about an album you put out. When I met you,
yeah.
This album had come out maybe a year before I met you, and it was called Who Knew? Who Knew? By C.O. Jones. And of course, if you spell out C.O. Jones, you have cojones, which is Dave Schulz has cojones. I can assure you of that. But I got to tell you, you and Steve DeMar. Well, listen, at least keep one around. You and Steve DeMarchi, who was someone I knew when I was a little kid, had
Yeah.
made this album, and I don't know if it's still out there, but it's
out there.
It's on Spotify, I hope, or something.
Yeah, I got it. It's
Okay,
on Spotify
it's called
under my name. Hold on. It's on Spotify under my name, Dave Schulz, SCHULZ, and also C.O. Jones. So you can hear the whole record.
This is one of the better albums I heard in that era, Dave, and it's very funky, and I just love it. I still listen to it to this day. So you should all go out and find Who Knew by C.O. Jones. So
it was
a really good album.
Yeah, it was produced by the late Rick Joyner. Rest in peace. He was a percussionist for Rick James and Stone City Band. So that was a big honor for me. We had a lot of Stone City Rick James alumnus on it. We had we had Jerry Livingston. We had Kenny Hawkins. It was awesome. I mean, for me, I was 23 at the time. It was like a mind-blowing, it was my first record I ever made. So, I mean, it will always be my favorite.
You still play. You still play with a number of Rick James Stone City people to this day in Buffalo, don't you?
I used to. I mean, Kenny and Jerry were in the band, and they're obviously known for that band, for Rick James. But lately, I kind of have I like to brag, the cream of the crop of Buffalo musicians, and that's always been the standard I try to live up to. And so I'm always kind of scouting the hot talent in Buffalo, and that's sort of my MO. makes me sound better.
Well, I'll tell you something, folks. If you're not from Buffalo, I will tell you, and this is not just civic pride talking. Buffalo has always had a very active and vibrant arts community.
Oh yeah,
in theater, in music, arts. Yeah,
even more so now. I mean, it's
well
awesome
beyond
now.
Its population or its economic strength, and the city has come roaring back. I haven't been there in a number of years, but I never thought Buffalo would change, Dave. I never thought it would ever get better than the Rust Belt town it was when I was growing up. And thank God, it's like the sky opened up or something, Dave. I mean, I
agree. When I left to go tour with the Goo Goo Dolls, it was 98. So I was 26 at the time. I should never tell my age. Anyways, and that's how I felt at that time, is what you just said. But I totally don't feel that way anymore. I agree with you 100%.
I think it's fantastic. Okay, so Dave, let's talk about that era. Signifies that era, the late 90s, early 2000s, when I got to know you, signifies a sea change in the entire music industry and probably everything about being a musician, in that the technology of the MP3 and then ultimately streaming, it completely shattered this industry in ways I don't even comprehend. So before we get into what this means to you as a musician or a songwriter, tell me what has happened in the broad sense with the music industry, because I just start with this. I don't know how the hell anyone, if you make an album, how do you get it monetized? How do you get paid other than playing live? So tell me what's happened.
Well, I will be the first to admit I am not the guy, the authority on that. Most of my living, 99.9%, is from playing live. And I do studio sessions a lot, and I do some scoring, but I put out a record in 2009 called Connect, which I was so proud of. I had Daniel Lanois was on it, Tony Levin, all these people that I just worshipped. Bernard Fowler from the Stones, who I had met actually that night, or the first time I opened for him. We became friends, and he was a big influence on me. But that record, I spent like 10 grand on making it over a few months, and then I had like another 20 to promote it. But once the money ran out, I had nothing left. I couldn't promote it anymore. So I haven't really promoted a record properly since then. I just decided to become a working musician, which is a whole different sort of reality for me. When I make music now, it's for me. I don't do it for monetization.
Well, that's different.
I just don't.
Okay, so tell me what has been
But
the impact though as a working musician or as a singer songwriter? I would imagine it's all about the live performance now.
yeah, I mean, I get hired to do a lot of tours, for example. So like, currently like Wang Chung, Berlin, Sweet, Fastball, those are all people that have had hits and success in early years, like 10, 20 years ago. So I'm the guy they hire to play keyboards with them. I go on tour, I get paid a flat fee. I'm happy with that. That's my life. Um, so, and ironically, it's been a blessing because I've been fortunate to make a really good living as that entity, that sort of side guy musician who also I still work on original music. It's just I don't have that mindset of monetization yet with it, so I haven't kept up with it honestly. What that would be, you'd have to ask the guy that runs CD Baby or something. He would be the authority on that. How has it affected? It hasn't really affected me. I mean, I don't like to talk too much money in money terms, but I would say, generally speaking, my living is better now than it was in the 90s from working. I do
Yeah.
20, 24 shows a month. I would say a third of them are solo gigs, a third of them are touring, and then the other third are corporate events, private events. So it's kind of like a mix.
Well, it's it's
stuff.
it's a whole lifetime of dedication, Dave, because I see how much you're working and how much you're out there. So let's go down the line of, I'm going to name some names, and now we're going to name names because I think this is interesting. Sure. I'm
Are you
named
name
for
dropping,
you,
Josh?
but for you, not for me. You're out there right now. You're out there right now with Berlin and Wang Chung and Sweet. Mm-hmm. And keep going. And we'll talk about some other people you've worked with. Fastball, yeah.
Fastball was a band that I met on that Goo Goo Dolls tour in the 90s. They were our opening act for a good length of time. And I just became really good friends with them. I've been friends with them ever since. Like, for example, every time I was ever in Austin since the 90s, I would always invite them out to shows and stuff. So we've kept in touch for over 20 years. So I play with them when I'm able to. They have other guys too, but I love playing with Fastball. I just love their music. They have great records, great songwriters. Wang Chung is "To Live and Die in LA" was my absolute favorite song of the entire 80s, and I basically begged him to let me play it live.
So Dave, you mentioned the name Tony Levin, and this is a tremendous bass virtuoso. And I'm going to see him play that King Crimson stuff from the early 80s with Adrian Belew and Danny Carey and Steve Vai.
Awesome.
So you worked with Tony Levin on, I had forgotten that he was on your album Connect. Tell me a little bit about working with Tony Levin, because I look at him as a bass god.
He is a bass god. I'm a super big Peter Gabriel nut, and I'm actually doing a show called the Peter Gabriel Project in Vegas on May 4th. But Tony's like a huge influence. I just thought he was like from outer space or something, And I didn't actually, let me think about how this happened. Okay, so I was dating a girl, Natasha Levin from Buffalo, and I took her to see him at the Trout Amador Cafe way back, probably 2000 or so. And somehow they realized they were related. So that was an interesting way to meet him. Same last name. I was like, no way are they related. And then somehow they figured out they were related. So I don't want to get too much into that story. But basically, and then I saw him at NAMM a couple times, introduced myself. But then my friend Fuzzby, who's a great guitar player, producer guy, used to play with Lou Reed in the 80s and stuff. It was really good friends with him. And then Fuzzby basically hooked me up with him and officially, and then I got him to play on the record.
He went to the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, So tell me about your father, because I understand he passed when you were very young, but he was in the Buffalo Philharmonic, correct?
Yeah, he was like me get it straight. I mean, he basically founded this thing called the Buffalo Choral Arts Society in 1964, and that was it's gone global since then. You know, they perform all over the world. And then he also was the conductor of the BPO off and on for many years. So, and he was a Gershwin fanatic, so he would do like Rhapsody in Blue, American in Paris, all that kind of stuff. He'd be conducting and playing the piano. It was total nutball stuff, crazy shit.
He's reading a score. You know, wait. He's reading score and conducting while he plays.
Well, I have no idea how that's possible, but that's what they tell me. But he was a showman, you know. Apple
don't fall far from the tree.
He did a lot of cool things. Yeah, no shit. Anyways, he died when I was 9, and I didn't really get a chance. He never heard me play piano. I think he was teaching me guitar at the time, and I just didn't like guitar because it made my fingers hurt. So I started to get really into the piano about 2 years after he died, and apparently I got really good at it fast. So some kind of weird osmosis happened there, you know.
So
is what I.
So it's interesting when I look at the names. If you go to DaveSchulzMusic.com, and remember, there's no T; it's just a Z. DaveSchulzMusic.com. You'll see
That's my career killer.
We tried to find you, but we couldn't spell it.
No one finds me. All they ever get is the Philadelphia Flyer or the Wrestler. That's all. They never get me.
So
Dave Schulz.
All right. So if you go on Dave's site, you will see some names there, and another interesting name is Lindsay Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's not really. I didn't spend much time with Lindsay, to be honest. It was about 4 days. I was subbing for another Lindsay Vanoy, who used to play with Alice Cooper as a keyboard player. He was Elton John's main keyboard tech for many years. He's an awesome guy. And he hired me to go into the Lindsay Buckingham world, to trigger samples offside of the stage, vocal samples. So I wasn't even on stage, but I was like, on stage, off behind the curtain, triggering samples from a keyboard for various songs like Go Your Own Way and, more like the classic Fleetwood Mac stuff that he would do. And I would trigger the actual Fleetwood Mac backing vocals.
This was at a Fleetwood Mac gig or at a Lindsay Buckingham gig?
Actually.
Okay.
No.
Now, here's what I'm getting at. I'm going to mention another name, which is Cherie Currie from the Runaways. And I know you've worked with her. Tell me about her, but also, Dave,
awesome.
You have tremendous dexterity as a musician. I mean, one thing I tell my son in my limited knowledge of music is you got to be ready to play any genre. And I encourage him to play jazz, classical, everything. You have a very eclectic mix of people that you note on your site. Tell me a little bit about Cherie and about dexterity itself.
I mean, I kind of call it diversity. I was always wanting to play. I grew up really into funk, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Headhunters, Weather Report. I was into fusion. I was into prog rock. I was a huge Yes fan. I was like obsessed with XTC, but I was also obsessed with Devo. I mean, I just like good records, good music. So it doesn't really fall into any category. It's really just good or bad for me. But with that said, it kind of made me want to have that in my own life, musical diversity. So I didn't want to just be a jazz guy or just be a classical guy. In order to excel in any of those fields, you have to pretty much devote yourself to it. So I will be the first to admit, I'm not the greatest jazz player. I'm not the greatest classical player, but I can do them all pretty good. And that has allowed me to work with different people. And more importantly, my mental view of it and my knowledge of music is greater because of it. So, I would feel very comfortable producing artists. I actually produced a couple songs. I produced a song with Cherie. You're asking about Cherie Currie. I produced a cover of Burt Bacharach's "What the World Needs Now Is Love," and it was great for her because she's known as one of the first, sort of punk female singers You know,
Yep.
the Runaways being one of the first all-female bands, and I thought it'd be really cool to do a completely 360 and have her cover a Burt
Well,
Bacharach tune, which is the opposite vibe. And she loved it, and it was awesome. And we made it to CNN and made it to American Songwriter. A lot of press went out on it, and we're going to do some more. I think we're going to do a David Bowie thing next, and I think we're going to eventually do a whole album
that's
of
great. Well,
unlikely covers
she
for
put
her.
out a very good record about a year
So
or
we're
two
just
ago. I really enjoyed. You know, there's a single, "What Do All the People Know," and so real quick, give another plug. May 4th. This is coming up real soon. May 4th in Vegas. In Vegas, is it? You have the Peter Gabriel gig.
Yeah, so there's a guy named Brody who is pretty popular in Vegas. He's a great singer. He put it together. He hired me, a great bassist, Jen Oberly, drummer Jimmy Keegan, and a guitar player from Vegas, Richard Belgard. And I think that's how you say it. Anyways, we just had a rehearsal a couple days ago. It was great. And obviously I'm totally into it because I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan. So this is May 4th at Club Madrid in Sunset Station. Is where it's going to be.
Dave,
and then
I want to talk to you about a tattoo. You showed me a tattoo of the Devo logo many years ago, and I grew up loving Devo, and I think they were to me, Dave, they were a band that needed to happen, and the idea behind the band, the idea that man is devolving, that he had peaked and is now on the way down back to the monkey stage. I have been preaching this. I am preaching this for years. I know we're headed back to the chimp stage, Dave. I know we are. And I loved Devo for that. So tell me about your love for Devo, because I know you have it tattooed on your arm.
It is. I got the duty now for the future, man. Ready for the world. Holding up the universe on my arm, which is kind of a hilarious metaphor for my life, because I'm definitely not doing that. But yeah. But anyways, so Devo was like a big deal for me. I was obsessed when I was in 5th grade. And my sister bought me the Duty Now for the Future album. Completely obsessed with it, with all their albums. New Traditionalist was probably my second favorite. But people love the first album. I love it. But the second and fifth are my favorite. But, you know, when I was playing with English Beat, the guy that booked English Beat was friends with Jerry and told him about me. And I thought Jerry Casale, he's co-founder, he's sort of the guy, the concept guy. And I thought that he was going to be scared of me totally because I had Devo tattoo on my arm. Like, oh, get away from this guy. He's creepy. But we ended up becoming friends. And it's like my favorite, probably one of my top 3 favorite professional relationships, I would say, is Jerry from Devo, you know, Tony Levin, and, you know, and Bernard Fowler. I would say those 3, like, just honored to be their friend, you know, and the fact that Devo is the real reason why I started playing keyboards when I was like in 5th grade. And now
40,
what do you say? 30
40
some years later.
Oh,
don't
listen,
age me.
When I saw,
I played on Jerry's solo.
Finish.
Hold on. I was going to say the real wheel of karma is that I ended up on Jerry's solo album as a result, called Jihad Jerry and the Evildoers. Josh Freese on drums, the rest of the Devo guys. I guess Mark Mothersbaugh was unavailable on some particular day, and Rob Juarez, who was friends with him, recommended me to do the session, and then I did the session. Here I am playing on a Jerry Casale record. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I can tell you, when in 1978, they had a great season of Saturday Night Live when my favorite band, Talking Heads, was on. But they had the night Devo came on and played Satisfaction. I'm growing up in Amherst, New York. You can't be further from CBGB than to be growing up in Amherst, New York. And I remember in middle school.
Well,
yeah. No, I know.
Mark Freeland came from there.
His memory.
Kenmore.
I remember seeing Devo, and they did Satisfaction by the Stones, and they did their whole thing. The whole thing.
Right.
Everybody came to school. Everybody came to school Monday morning and was like, what the
Genius.
hell was that? And I was like, this was so truly new. So,
Oh,
Dave,
totally.
let's finish with a little something.
So great.
Tell the lay people something interesting about keyboards. I saw you showed me something. We met up about a year ago, and you showed me something about how. And again, I'm a lay person. I don't know this, but I thought this was interesting that you
It's okay.
can program different octaves or different sections of your keyboard to play vastly different instrumentation sounds. And I thought I didn't know about this. I thought this was really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, that concept has been around since keyboards started. Since the workstation. I mean, it's called splitting and layering. It's a common thing with synthesizers. You could basically have, like, on the left, say the first octave can be a bass, the second and third can be a piano, the top two can be, an oboe, or whatever the hell you want to do. All I was telling you
You're good.
sorry about the phone. Am I good? Am I good on the picture? All I was telling you at our lunch with your son was that it's just gotten so much better. So the technology, the program that I choose to use is called Gig Performer. It's the one that a lot of people use is called Mainstage. It's a Mac program. I use Gig Performer because it's a program that allows me to put any sound from any source, soft synths, VSTs, onto any section of a keyboard without it crashing the computer, which is just, I don't want anything to go wrong live. So I got to be secure. I don't want to be worrying about that at all. I just want to go out and play, So that's just a sort of a software version of that concept, and it just maximizes it to the best way possible.
What gear
So
do you,
I'm using it
take
from all
on the
my
road?
tours
What kind
right
of
now,
a keyboard do you
basically.
take on the road? What do you take?
So I used to be the guy with 3-4 keyboards on stage. Now I just use one. Well, okay, with Berlin, I have two. I use a Nord Stage 4, which controls Gig Performer, which also controls all the computer software, if that makes sense. So the keyboard is acting as a controller. I don't actually use any sounds from the Nord, but if something broke down on the computer level, I could turn the Nord on and use it. That's why I choose that particular model as a backup keyboard, because it's, in my opinion, one of the best keyboards out there. So that's the Stage 4. And then on top, for Berlin, on top, I use a Microkorg, which nerdy keyboard players know that that's one of the best synths out there. Classic little tiny 37-note keyboard. And then with all the other bands, I just use the Stage 4 and I program it, as I had just explained, with all those splits and layers. And, I use Omnisphere. The programs I like to use is called Omnisphere, Keyscape, Arturia, V Collection, Chord Collection, Roland Cloud. I use all that stuff. And it's basically, I'm not married to any one company. I do so much different music, like you were talking about diversity. Every artist requires different sounds. You can't it's not a blanket thing. So Wang Chung requires a whole different sonic scape. And Cherie Currie requires a whole different thing. So I just close my eyes when I listen to the material, and I kind of conceptualize what's needed, for each thing. And it's kind of a lot of fun to program it too. All the work's in the programming. Once I get to the playing stage, it's a breeze, like, honestly. So the programming to me is the real work, and then learning the material is another, journey. But
Dave,
then when
let's
that's
finish
over,
with this.
it's really
Tell me,
fun.
for a guy who's on the road all the time, and I know you have things to do when you're home in LA. You're on the road all the time, but you're a working musician,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a very tough thing to become.
Yeah.
And so I have the immense respect for the career you've built. Tell me before we finish. Tell me before we finish about the level of sacrifice and discipline that has taken.
Well, sacrifice, failed relationships, substance abuse. Just kidding.
I know you are.
No, I'm totally kidding. Well, I used to have. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. okay, in the first 10 years, a lot of failed relationships, and
No, you were never a drug
no real
guy.
drugs. I was never a drug guy. I drank a little too much.
Yeah,
No,
well,
I
so
drank
did
a little
I.
too
So
much
what are you
whiskey.
going to do?
That's the honest truth. But now, but now, I'm not able to do that doing 24 shows a month. But back
Right.
then, I was only doing 10 shows a month. So I decided that I wanted to work harder so that I'm always busy, so that I'm not tempted, keeps me healthy, and I've got a great relationship with somebody right now.
Good.
So,
All right.
everything's working out really good.
I got you. No, I got
I
you.
mean,
Well,
I don't know how else to say it.
yeah.
Other than I hustled my ass off
Well,
for
it's
years
a
to get to
life.
this point.
It's
That's
a
the bottom
very.
line.
You're very devoted, and it's just what it takes. So, Dave, finish.
Yeah.
You're devoted.
Devoted.
You're devolving, and you're devoted.
Haha.
Finish here. I'm getting there.
Hopefully,
I'm
we can
almost
both meet
there.
up for lunch
I'm almost there.
as chimps
Tell me
one day.
where we find you. I know it's DaveSchulzMusic.com. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Yeah. Just that you spell it right. DAVESCHULZ music.com. And Peter Gabriel show on May 4th. I'm also going out on a Wang Chung tour. We're performing with the Motels, Naked Eyes, and Men Without Hats starting May 17th near Austin, Texas. It's called Abducted by the 80s. You can just look it up. Just type in Abducted by the 80s, Wang Chung. You'll see all the dates. And that's going between like May, June, and July a bit. And then, that's what's happening currently. That keeps me busy. And then other than that, I got all my dates in the live section of my website.
Well, Dave, listen, thank you so much for taking the time today, and much respect for the career that you've built, and always love seeing you. So we'll talk
Josh.
soon.
Maybe they'll let me back into this hotel. I'm loitering right now. All right, man. Have a good one. See ya.